It's time for munching and mating in the Macrocystis, or giant kelp, with your host, Dr. Bill Bushing. One of the best things about my job is that when I go to the office, I don't have to wear a tie with my suit. Wetsuit, that is. In this episode, we will look at a group of species currently classified in the clinid fish family. These include the giant kelpfish and 3 kelpfish in the genus Gibbonsia. Many of the species we commonly call kelpfish belong to the clinid family. This group formerly included about 200 species worldwide. Modern taxonomic methods using DNA have shown several of the former clinids belong in different families, which will be covered in the next episode. These include the island kelpfish, fringeheads, and pike blennies. Current members of the clinid family have a long dorsal fin, which begins just behind the head and ends just in front of the tail. They usually have small cycloid scales and projections known as cirri on their heads. The clinids are one of 6 fish families considered to be true blennies. All are grouped together in a suborder known as the blenioids. Thus, the name blenny is somewhat ambiguous due to the number of different families it has been applied to. Blennies are primarily tropical to subtropical. They are elongate and often eel-like in shape. The swimming mode of fish, like the giant kelpfish, is referred to as anguilliform or eel-like. The scaled blennies are in the clinid family and are more temperate in distribution. The scaleless blennies are classified in the family Bleniidae, which has species worldwide. The largest members of this blenny group are the wolffish and wolf eels. The largest species in the clinid family is the giant kelpfish, Heterostachys rostratus. It is easily recognized by its laterally compressed or flattened body, elongated head, pointed snout, and forked tail. All other kelpfish in this family have rounded tails. This is the only living member of the genus Heterostachys. Its species name rostratus means long-nosed. Giant kelpfish get their name from the giant kelp, Macrocystis, which they frequent and often mimic. Some have suggested it is due to their large size compared to other members of the family. Other common names include iodine fish, butterfish, and kelp blenny. This species' color and markings vary greatly. Individuals may be observed in shades of yellow, yellow-green, green, green-brown, red-brown, brown, and even lavender. Although these base colors may be free of markings, blotches, bars, and spots can also be visible. Note the unusual spotted pattern on this individual. A white stripe is frequently seen along the upper surface of the head between the eyes. These kelpfish are able to change both their color and markings to camouflage with their surroundings for protection. This one shows an unusual dual coloration. Perhaps it was in the process of changing color. One researcher suggests that the markings, produced by 4 different types of the pigment melanin, change more easily than the background body color. Not all markings on the body are due to melanin, as you can see in these white blotches along the sides of these giant kelpfish. Animals which exhibit different colors to match those of their surroundings are said to have cryptic coloration. Dr. Milton Love reports that young kelpfish may change color fairly quickly between green and brown to match their surroundings. He states that females are better able to change colors and may assume the full range observed in this species. Males are much more limited and can't change to red or a true green. This is interesting since the males are the ones that guard the eggs in the fixed nests, which might suggest a need for better camouflage. In most cases, the giant kelpfish does an excellent job of camouflaging itself. However, based on my observations, some animals are better able to match their surroundings. Others seem to have great difficulty. The inability to match its background is probably linked in part to the inability of the males to achieve certain colors, or to the time necessary for the color change to occur. Body color alone is not their only adaptation for camouflage. They also use behavioral methods. Giant kelpfish may be seen locking their ventral fins on the base of the pneumatocyst of a kelp blade, or on a portion of the stipe, and adjusting their body orientation to look just like the giant kelp blades. Giant kelpfish will also seek shelter among other kelps, such as Icenia, the southern sea palm kelp, various species of red algae, and even the exotic Japanese Sargassum filicinum, which invaded Southern California beginning in 2003. The giant kelpfish is common in Southern California and may be found down to Cabo San Lucas in southern Baja. To the north, they become occasional and then rare as one proceeds up the west coast into British Columbia. Individuals have been observed down to a depth of 132 feet. They inhabit kelp beds and areas of abundant brown or red algal growth. Giant kelpfish may reach 7 inches after 1 year, and a foot within 2.5 to 3 years. Individuals over 15 inches are fairly uncommon, but one was reported to have measured 2 feet in length. A possible case of steroid use, perhaps? Females are said to reach slightly larger size and live longer than the males. Feeding is done primarily during the day. Giant kelpfish are often seen swimming slowly over the bottom or dense patches of algae looking for food. When they see it, they lunge forward with their pointed head to snap it up. Prey may include crustaceans such as shrimp, mysids, and amphipods, little mollusks such as clams, and small fish including kelp perch and senorita. Now that's not very kosher of them, since senorita often provide giant kelpfish a service as cleaners, removing parasites from their gill cavities and bodies. Of course, if they don't find a good cleaner, the kelpfish will rub their bodies on the bottom to scratch their itches, just like many other fish. Occasionally, the kelpfish uses its own tail to scratch its itches. Fish in the 16-inch range may weigh over a pound. I have heard reports they are fished for food. Speaking of kosher, giant kelpfish are so categorized by my friends in the Jewish community, as is the Garibaldi, much to my horror. To my knowledge, I have never spoken to a human who has eaten one, and therefore have no idea how they taste. Given my culinary skills, all fish taste essentially the same. Burnt, or well done Cajun blackened if you prefer. More frequent predators on giant kelpfish include birds like cormorants and terns. Giant kelpfish are sexually mature at 7 to 8 inches in length. They are reported to spawn year-round, with peaks from January to May noted off Catalina Island. Males establish a territory within which they utilize nests of algae. One researcher found that giant kelpfish use patches of the red alga Gelidium most frequently, especially when it was surrounded by clumps of taller brown algae. 7 of 9 nests observed in their study were in solitary clumps of algae rather than regions of continuous algal growth. I have seen giant kelpfish nesting in the green alga Codium fragile. My observations suggest brown algae, particularly the smaller kelps, are used most frequently in Catalina waters, but this is not based on any scientific study. However, I will gladly accept funding to conduct such research. A few $100,000 should suffice. The male initiates mating by enticing the female into his nest. The females are oviparous, laying pink to greenish eggs externally. These may number between 400 and 1,200. As the female lays her eggs, the male darts in to fertilize them. The female's gonads are almost entirely emptied during a spawning event. However, each female may spawn several times a year. The eggs have entangling threads extending from their surface, which allow them to attach to algae. In naturally occurring nests, the eggs appear to be somewhat spaced out, rather than laid in large clumps. This may facilitate gas transfer from the water to each egg. Dr. Milton Love reported that each nest contains the eggs of only a single female. However, on several occasions I have observed more than one female enter a single male's nest and lay eggs. Here you can see examples of this. These ménage-à-trois do not seem unusual, although the relative frequency with which this may occur is uncertain. For another $500,000, I'll research this as well. On 2 occasions I have observed the male bite the female on her tail, just as I have seen in Garibaldi mating. Women's liberation appears to have been perfected by several fish species, including the giant kelpfish, some of its smaller relatives, and, of course, the Garibaldi. Once they have laid their eggs, the females are free to leave and frolic in the kelp forest. The poor male is stuck with the child-rearing duties, defending the nest constantly from potential egg predators. The male guards the nest until the eggs hatch in 12 to 17 days. The resulting larvae then drift in the plankton for a fairly brief 2 weeks. Most will settle in 5 to 30 feet of water during the spring and summer months. The newly recruited young kelpfish school near the bottom for protection, sometimes with other marine life such as mysids. They may also frequent the protection of the upper kelp canopy. However, within 2 to 4 months, at a size of 2 to 3 inches, they develop their adult coloration and begin a largely solitary life. I can empathize with that. The giant kelpfish is not the only kelpfish remaining in the clinid family. There are several other, smaller species that are often seen amongst the algae on our rocky reefs. They will be featured in this segment. 3 of the kelpfish are members of the scientific genus Gibbonsia, the spotted, striped, and crevice kelpfish. Formerly there was thought to be a 4th, the scarlet kelpfish, but it was later found to be a color variant of the crevice kelpfish, rather than a separate species. The 3 species are difficult to identify without a microscope. Distinguishing them from one another involves close inspection of the fin rays and the presence or absence of scales on the tail and its base. These kelpfish are all much smaller than the giant kelpfish, with maximum sizes ranging from 4.5 to 9.5 inches. People often refer to them as blennies, and the clinids are indeed in that group. Note the slightly hooked spines on the foredorsal fin. Members of this genus have rounded tails, which distinguish them from the young giant kelpfish, whose tail is forked. The crevice kelpfish, Gibbonsia monterreyensis, has a single row of eye-like spots along its upper side, with the first, and those towards the rear, being most obvious. Its short pectoral fin does not reach back to the anal fin. In shallow water they are usually brown to reddish-brown, gray, or lavender in color. But below 65 feet, red, scarlet, or pink are the dominant colors. The spotted kelpfish, Gibbonsia elegans, has 1 to 3 but most commonly 2 spots on its side. The pectoral fin extends almost to the anal fin. The head may exhibit pigment bars radiating out from the eye. This species may be observed in shades of gray to tan, brown, maroon, or green. There may also be bars, blotches, or stripes along the sides. The markings on this individual appear to be suppressed. Like many kelpfish, they may change both color and markings to match their surroundings. Geographically, these 3 species differ in their distribution, but overlap in Southern California. The crevice and striped kelpfish have somewhat similar distributions between British Columbia, Canada, and Baja California, Mexico. They are more northern in their affinities and are considered members of the colder Oregonian biogeographic province. Their distribution in the southern part of their range is often limited to scattered cold water habitats. The spotted kelpfish is found from Point Piedras Blancas in central California to Magdalena Bay in Baja. It is considered part of the Californian biogeographic province. The maximum depth range of these species varies from 30 feet to 185 feet for the spotted kelpfish. All 3 prefer rocky areas with crevices and abundant algae to hide in. They use the seaweeds to camouflage against, limiting their vulnerability to predators. When exposed, they often dart back into the dense algal growth for protection. These kelpfish may be fairly common intertidally, and are often seen on wave-exposed coasts. When found in tide pools, they avoid drying out during low tides by hiding in the moist seaweeds. Intertidal life requires them to adjust to wide ranges in temperature and other environmental factors. Research has shown that each species possesses different physiological mechanisms to deal with these variations. Prey most likely include small mobile crustaceans. Their relatively large eyes undoubtedly help them detect these critters amongst the algae. You may observe them dart forward to snatch the hapless invertebrates. Males are reported to guard the white egg masses, which are usually attached to low-growing seaweeds. Adults do not migrate or move far once they have settled.